And we're live. Good to have everybody here today. We got a couple interesting headlines to get to. This is the Trish Regan Show. I am Trish. And it seems that Comcast is really, really itching to get this deal done. You know, the one where they get to get rid of Rachel Maddow. They just reported earnings yesterday. And that was sort of the highlight. I mean, other than the fact that, you know, they're still struggling on the streaming side. I think they only have 41 million subscribers at that Peacock network. It just hasn't budged at all. I think they're charging a little bit more, but they're not growing subscribers at all. But the headline really is that they just can't wait to get rid of MSNBC and one Rachel Maddow. I mean, she's kind of synonymous, if you would, with MSNBC these days. And this company is ready, willing, and able to discard her pretty fast. So here are the numbers, right? So if you look at their earnings, they did actually generate some revenue. It grew by 2%, $30.31 billion. Not too bad. But here's what's interesting. Advertising revenue, that dropped 7%. They did see an increase in revenue, but not overall numbers in terms of the Peacock subscribers. Why is this relevant? Because they're still really struggling. I mean, they get a few things like Love Island USA, which apparently is like the only draw there on Peacock. And so that was a big deal. That was their big sort of significant feather in their cap, if you would. But here's what's fascinating to me. They talked about a record-breaking upfront for NBC Universal. And then they started going on and on about how they're really able to synergize their linear and streaming media businesses into some kind of holistic thing overall. And here's the kicker, okay? Let me read for you the quote where they said, this is actually the CEO, okay? The CEO of the whole company is saying, when you look ahead now, a couple of quarters down the road, i.e. translation, when we get rid of or MSNBC people, after I call it versant, but it's really versant. You know, it sounds a little more like them because if it's a little French, it's a little more hoity-toity, they get their versant spin. Once we have that media business, it's made up of NBC, Broadcast, Bravo, Telemundo, these are handpicked, as well as Peacock, that are completely symbolic, he says, leveraging the strengths of the entertainment business, which is both scripted and reality entertainment, as well as sports and news. Well, then we're going to be off to the races, right? He talks about that new NBC media segment, the new media segment being without Rachel Maddow, being without MSNBC, being without those cumbersome, very volatile cable assets, which have proven themselves to be nothing but a noose around their neck, if you would, over there at Comcast and NBC. So once seen as the darling of the Comcast business, it was all about content, right? Well, at some point, once streaming came along, everything changed. And people like Rachel Maddow now are being seen more as an expensive nuisance that they're very happy to get rid of. Very, very happy to show the door to. So that's Rachel right now. If you look at Versant, this is the new company. As I said, they just came out with announcing more board of directors members. And if you look at who's actually part of that, what you see is that it's all the dregs, like the stations that they don't want, that they can't really make any money off of right now, which includes, of course, MSNBC. CNBC, sort of surprisingly, it's a better company, if you would, in that people, I still think, care about their stock market news. But then again, you can get it on your phone, right? You don't have to tune in to CNBC in order to see what the stock market is doing, which today was a pretty rough day. You may have seen. We can talk about that a little bit more coming up. Jerome Powell, the pressure's on. You got to cut rates. Anyway, you look at MSNBC, Oxygen, Sci-Fi, Fandango, Rotten Tomatoes. These are all the assets, including USA Network, that they don't want anymore. And as a result of that, you know what? They think they are going to have a hell of a company when it's all said and done. They are so proud. Again, getting back to the CEO's quote here. This is Mike Kavanaugh over at Comcast. He said, when you look ahead now, a couple of quarters down the road after the Versant spin, we're going to have a media business made up of NBC, Broadcast, Bravo, Telemundo, as well as Peacock that's completely symbolic, leveraging all of our strengths effectively, not just in the entertainment business, but also in the news business, in the sports business. In other words, they're willing to commit to news as we knew, without that opinion. They want to get back to sort of real news, if you would, if they can. I mean, if you trust NBC to be able to do that, that's the whole idea. They get rid of these underperforming businesses while simultaneously being able to hopefully get back to some kind of realness. And so how this is going to be painted, of course, is Rachel Maddow and others over at MSNBC, when they realize, oh, they're not going to get paid as much to stay on because the company's not performing as well, they're going to see this as Donald Trump's fault, right? Because everything in the world is Donald Trump's fault. In fact, they were already sort of greasing the wheels for this narrative even before he came into office. I want to show you a clip of Rachel Maddow on The View, where Joy Behar and Rachel Maddow collectively together are so worried about losing their jobs, and they think it's all because of Trump. And we hate to break it to them, but it's actually because of them. It's actually because of bad ratings and a changing industry that they cannot adapt to given where they are at this point in time. Take a look. It's kind of funny.
So you said recently that you thought that you, as an outspoken critic, could be a target yourself. Some people think that sounds overdramatic, but I'm right there with you. I think that he is so vindictive that he will go after, however he has to, through the IRS maybe, or even through sponsors to get us off the air maybe, or you. Yeah. How seriously should we be taking that?
Well, so I was asked, am I worried about me? And my answer was, I'm worried about all of us. I'm no more worried about me than I am worried about everybody in the country. Yeah. I think it's bad to have somebody saying, give me as much power as you can in this country so I can use it to go after other Americans. So I can use it to go after these subhuman internal enemies, and I'll destroy them. Like, that's just not a good system for anybody. And I don't think anybody's safe if that's the sort of basis on which he wants to get more power.
Well, remember when Nixon had an enemies list? That was a proud moment for a lot of people if they were on the enemies list. Maybe we need to turn it around like that.
Well, I think that if he decides that he's going to go after you or me or anybody who's well known, we have resources. We'll likely be fine. But I think there's a pattern where he picks out individual people and effectively terrorizes them. But I mean, there's Stormy Daniels wearing a bulletproof vest to get into the courthouse.
Once you have political violence, you have fascism following that. So.
Oh, of course you do, okay? Rather than, gosh, guys, your ratings just aren't what they were. I mean, take a look at Rachel's, for goodness sakes. The woman makes what, a reported $25 million a year to show up on air once a week. Wow, good work if you can get it, I'd say. That's not going to happen anymore. Comcast is like, we can't wait to be separate from this company. We can't wait to no longer have to deal with Rachel Maddow on MSNBC. And the new investors, the people that own shares, although Brian Roberts, I think, is still going to own a good portion of this company. It's very tax efficient, by the way they're doing this spinoff. If you look at what's really going to happen, there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure because there's no one there to support now these crazy high salaries unless they're bringing in the revenue. And I don't think they're going to bring in the revenue, just judging by the ratings we have seen. I mean, they're not bringing in the revenue either over at The View, where they're also really challenged with ratings. The ratings are not what they were just a year ago. And even if they were, like, absolutely fantastic, apparently Col Bear had pretty decent ratings, but they got rid of him pretty fast. And why did they get rid of him? He was losing $30–40 million a year. I realize some people out there actually think it's perfectly fine in the name of the brand to be losing $30–40 million a year. But no, that's not actually fine in the real world. And what's happening now with this spinoff is that there's going to be some real world mentality creeping into the likes of MSNBC, where they're actually going to have to show something in order to earn that $25 million a year salary that she is so reported to earn. I want to show you here Brendan Carr's comments. He was asked directly on Fox, well, what about The View? The View worries they're going to be taken off the air. Will they be? Watch what he says.
Let's go to The View, shall we? Joy Behar yesterday said this.
First of all, who tried to overthrow the government on January 6th?
Wait, let me think. Who
was that again? That was not Obama. The thing about him is that he's so jealous of Obama because Obama is everything that he is not. Trim. Smart. Handsome.
Happily
married, and can sing Al Green's song, Let's Stay Together, better than Al Green. And Trump cannot stand it. It's driving him crazy. Jealousy is not green is not a good color.
That from yesterday. Who knows what happens today? The White House chose to respond to that. And this is what they said. Joy Behar is an irrelevant loser suffering from a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome. It's no surprise that The View's ratings hit an all-time low last year. She should self-reflect on her own jealousy of President Trump's historic popularity before her show is the next to be pulled off air, end quote. Is The View now in the crosshairs of this administration?
Look, it's entirely possible that there's issues over there. I mean, again, stepping back, this broader dynamic, once President Trump has exposed these media gatekeepers and smashed this facade, there's a lot of consequences. And I think the consequences of that aren't quite finished. And look, The View's got a lot of challenges there. It wasn't that long ago, I think one episode, one show alone, they had to stop, interrupt the show, and read 4 separate legal notices to try to avoid legal liability. So I'm not surprised to hear people saying that their ratings are struggling.
Well, sir, where does this end then?
Look, I think we need a course correction. You know, it's time for America's legacy broadcasters to return to promoting the public interest. And just recently, Skydance, which is looking to acquire CBS, wrote letters to the FCC committing to serious change, to trying to root out bias, to putting in place an ombudsman that would address these issues, to returning to unbiased, trustworthy journalism. That's where we have to go. And I think we're getting some wins along the way. It's trust but verify at the end of the day. You know, we're not where we need to go. But I think this legacy media really needs to reorient, or they're going to continue to run into issues like Col Bear, where it just doesn't make economic sense to run a partisan circus.
Right. Partisan circus is right. So it didn't make sense to continue on with Col Bear. I think I showed you guys this in my shorts feed. Col Bear had some kind of protest that was organized outside Paramount CBS the other day to protest the fact that he had been taken off the air, and you had like 8 people show up. I mean, he really started to lose relevance. He didn't have much presence online. The company was losing money on his particular show. Maybe he should have taken a salary cut. And so as a result, it finds itself off the air, which is what happens in normal business. And so in the case of MSNBC, they are thrilled over at NBC, at Comcast, to be able to get rid of this. And now think about what that took, if you would. Because theoretically, yes, you got MSNBC, which is in the news business. Again, I said theoretically. So theoretically in the news business, I mean, it's certainly in the propaganda business, if you would. And they should be able to cost synergize with NBC, because NBC is out there gathering the news, therefore all the video feeds, et cetera, that can come into MSNBC. That should theoretically make sense, right? Along with CNBC as well. You should be able to leverage all of these together and therefore make money. But in this environment, you have Comcast willing to say bye-bye to Rachel and to Morning Joe. And they already quite literally said goodbye. No more. We're done. To one Joy Reid. Good call. Good move. No wonder she was so desperate for Donald Trump to lose. Maybe she knew the handwriting was on the wall. I think they all knew the handwriting was on the wall. But in this particular case, you're just talking about pure economics as well. In other words, these shows aren't one relating with viewers. People aren't tuning in to watch them. People are coming over here to, what do you know, YouTube, Trish Regan show. Please make sure you subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff, because they're looking for something. It is my firm belief that is more authentic, that is more real, that is transparent, and is not what those big legacy media companies are offering. And so things have changed. You look at the ratings, for example, over at MSNBC, and they're pretty bad. In fact, Jen Psaki's ratings, I think they're just as bad, if not worse, than what Rachel Maddow was getting just a year ago. I actually know that. They are actually worse. If you could imagine it could get any worse, it has gotten worse. And this is, when Rachel thought, well, it'll just be great if we have Jen Psaki coming in to replace, what was her name? The woman that was there, was it Alex Wagner? I think that was a big deal when they decided she was going to take over Jen Psaki, that is, the 4 nights a week that Rachel wasn't in the slot. And Jen Psaki can't get any kind of traction whatsoever. That doesn't surprise me. If I'm going to be generous, I will say this about Rachel Maddow. She does come across as a slightly more authentic person. I mean, not really, but, she's better than Peppermint Patty, right? Like Peppermint Patty, who used to be up there for Biden, was just lying through her teeth nonstop all day, 24/7. That is the job. You know, you're the press person and you're just going to lie for Biden all day long. And so at least Rachel had that kind of distance between herself and Jen Psaki. One of the things that was so interesting to me was the quote that she gave to Us Weekly, in which Rachel Maddow talked about how Jen Psaki was going to be so great at this job, right? She was going to be so great at this job because she was so plugged in, and that somehow was going to make her bigger and better than, Rachel. Good luck with that one, right? I mean, we kind of knew that was never really going to be able to come to fruition. But I'll tell you, she's something else. She's an interesting lady, and I think she's very good at taking you down a rabbit hole of nonsense with great conspiracy theories. I mean, perhaps her most signature one, if you would be Russia, Russia, Russia. We saw that, and as a result, she's struggling big time. I want to turn to another story right now. A CNN host just came out and said what the Democratic Party is really struggling with in terms of its brand. He said it is garbage. It's in the basement. Total garbage brand right now. You know what? I couldn't have said it better myself. Harry Enton, I think his name is, over at CNN. Let's play him for a spin here, shall we see? I was kind of surprised. I mean, a CNN host actually admitting the truth on where the brand is, the Democrat brand right now, in the garbage. Watch.
Particular point, the Democratic brand is in the basement. It is total and complete garbage in the mind of the American public. The Democratic Party's net favorable rating, record lows in all three. Wall Street Journal, 30 points underwater. CNN, 26 points underwater. Gallup, 26 points underwater. And that is being driven in large part by discontent within the Democratic base. The Democratic base wants something different. We'll ultimately end up seeing who they choose. It'll be quite the thing who ultimately gets the rose.
Yeah. We'll see who they choose. Let's hope it's not AOC or Mamdani or any of these communist, socialist, crazy tune pants that they've got there on the left, like the extreme left of the Democrat Party. It's frightening because increasingly you're hearing this momentum towards that extremism, that radicalism. And of course, where you're hearing it on the channel that Comcast is so darn thrilled to get rid of. Here's Rev Sharpton talking with somebody about how we just need to embrace more of this crazy tune nonsense, communism. Sorry, it's been done. It's been tried all around the world. You know, it sounds good at first, and then everybody realizes who these people are. They just want bigger government for themselves. Anyway, the Democrat Party clearly has a problem. Watch.
Obama. So, Director, a bunch of questions from this. Let me just start with this. How much does the source matter, right? So you hear the story of...
Speaking of polling, a new Wall Street Journal poll shows Democrats getting their lowest approval number among voters in 35 years, with Republicans outperforming them by nearly 20 points. How big of a red flag should this be for Democrats a year before the midterms? And what can they do to improve their perception among voters?
It's red everywhere, Rev. And it's not just a red flag. This is a blaring red alarm that Democrats should not ignore. And I say that thinking about how angry people are, because Democrats specifically ran on a platform in 2024 about how dangerous Donald Trump is, how he would lead an authoritarian type of regime in this administration, and how he is now acting on that. And Democrats have yet to formulate an explicit, comprehensive response to someone that they identified as a threat. They're not treating him as a threat. There's these attempts to use normal tactics in politics that no longer apply to the playbook or the reality that we're experiencing. And I think it's important for Democrats.
So what are the normal tactics? In all seriousness, you guys, what were those normal tactics? Were those the things that like Clapper was caught doing, what Brennan was caught doing, what Comey was caught doing? Are those the normal tactics? I mean, it does not surprise me, right, that the Democrats have a problem, that they're the worst that they've been in 35 years. But, you know, when you lie to people over and over again, yeah, your brand is going to be in the garbage, okay? Because at some point people wake up and they're like, okay, number one, you're out. And number two, why do you keep still lying to me? I mean, think about Clapper, right? Clapper trying to tell us something a couple of years ago that totally wasn't true. And now we know it. Remember this?
Obama. So, Director, a bunch of questions from this. Let me just start with this. How much does the source matter, right? So you hear the story of this laptop. We don't know a lot. We do know that the way that this information is getting out is through Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani. How much does the
By the way, God forbid, Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon. Here we go.
source matter here?
Well, source matters a lot, and the timing matters a lot, I think. And to me, this is just classic textbook Soviet-Russian tradecraft at work. The Russians have analyzed the target.
Okay, really, he goes on to explain it all, how the Russians were analyzing the target, and they figured, okay, we want to make sure that we somehow hurt Donald Trump however we can. Forgive me, Biden, however we can. So we're going to release this Hunter Biden laptop. And so the counter narrative was, well, it's not Hunter Biden's laptop. It's just a bunch of garbage being fed to you by Rudy Giuliani and the Russians. Except, what do we know, guys? What do we know? It turns out the whole thing was true. Okay, so when, again, the CNN host admits the obvious, that the Democrat brand is in the garbage, he's not wrong. He's not wrong because they lied to us over and over and over again. And now what are they doing? They're freaking out. They're totally freaking out. Hey, Clapper admitted he's lawyering up.
When the director says that she's referred these filings to the Justice Department for a criminal investigation, tonight we're told they formed what is called a strike force. Do you have concerns that they will attempt to prosecute you?
Well, certainly I do. After 8.5 years of this, and I don't know of an intelligence product that was more scrutinized, more investigated than that product was by numerous people. It's very disconcerting. It really is. And I take seriously when the President of the United States accuses me of being a participant in a treasonous conspiracy, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, what's your reaction to that?
It's ridiculous. It is untrue.
So what will you do if they come after you? What is your plan?
Well, I'll lawyer up, I suppose. Already have.
Yeah, of
You've
course.
already hired attorneys.
You lawyer up. He's already lawyering up. Of course he is. They're panicking. All of them are panicking. You get Peter Strzok, remember him from Lisa Page fame. He has completely taken down every tweet on X that he's ever sent. You've got all of them panicking right now because they realize that reality is catching up with them. I mean, reality, because for one thing, Donald Trump is demanding some accountability for sure. I mean, just look at what he put out on his social media today. Russia hoax is now totally undisputed. The facts are all there in black and white. It is the biggest scandal in American history. The perpetrators of this crime must pay a big price. This can never be allowed to happen in the country again. Meanwhile, Kash Patel says he's got burn bags filled with documents that were being kept in a hidden room in the Hoover building that the FBI was hanging on to. I mean, this is like wild stuff, you guys. And they keep getting proven wrong over and over and over and over again, right? Like Clapper trying to say, oh, that laptop wasn't Hunter Biden's. He was part of the 51X spooks. So they tried to tell us. Heck, they're taking down the New York Post Twitter account at the time because New York Post was reporting this. This is how wild it is. And then they're like gaslighting everybody, trying to say, no, you're the crazy one because really Donald Trump is the problem, as though he is the Manchurian candidate. Listen, I'm just going to say one thing, and I'll say one thing about this. The president has just sent 2 submarines to be off the coast of Russia. Okay, nobody wants any kind of conflict to heat up. But the fact that he's got some submarines hanging out there, that would not be done by the person that they wanted to have in the office. Okay, just another little tidbit for you. Anyway, Kash Patel, he's got the burn bags, so this should get interesting, right?
Me, as the director of the FBI, the former Russiagate guy, when I first got to the bureau, found a room that Comey and others hid from the world in the Hoover building, full of documents and computer hard drives that no one had ever seen or heard of. Locked the key and hid access and just said, no one's ever going to find this place.
What?
Yeah. So my guys are going through that right now.
What's in there?
A lot of stuff. I mean, that's the thing. People are like, well, okay, go arrest him. And I'm like, okay, well, how about you let me run a methodical investigation?
Okay, so the investigation's happening. Now, it's a fair question. What the heck are burn bags? So I didn't know this either because, well, it doesn't really come up, shall we say, in everyday conversation. All I could think of was that movie with Lindsay Lohan, The Burn Book, which is not quite a burn bag. Well, Tulsi Gabbard was asked about this as well by Glenn Beck. Here's her explanation. Apparently, it is pretty common in Intel communities, and the Intel community had a mission, right? And Tulsi's proven all that out right now. The mission was to destroy the Trump presidency, to try and take him down, and to undermine him at every single turn, trying to tell the American public that he was only there because of the Russians, that we didn't actually elect him. Think of how demoralizing that is to the American people. You're effectively telling them that their vote is no good. What a crazy thing to say. I mean, crazy, crazy thing to say. Anyway, here's Tulsi explaining the burn bags. Listen.
Sensitive documents related to the origins of the Trump-Russia probe buried in multiple burn bags in secret rooms inside the Bureau. What's a burn bag?
A burn bag is something that you'll find in many offices throughout the intelligence community, throughout these different workspaces in national security. Basically, if I have a document that's highly classified, I read it, I review it, I'm done with it. My copy can then go in the burn bag to make sure that it's not doesn't end up in the wrong hands, that there's not an unauthorized disclosure of classified information. It's a very different story, however, if you use a burn bag to try to get rid of evidence of which maybe there is only one copy of, and then hide it in a secret room in the FBI. That is a tactic, obviously, that has been used by those deep staters, these bad actors within the intelligence community to try to get rid of evidence. Another tactic that's often used is over-classifying information. This is what happened with the Steele dossier. This was already widely publicized as a discredited document. But what John Brennan did and James Clapper did as the CIA director and the Obama's director of national intelligence, they didn't want anybody to know that they used the Steele dossier as a source for this intelligence assessment that was filled with falsehoods they published in January of 2017, as well as other really, really shoddy intelligence sources.
It was so shoddy. It was so bad. I couldn't believe it when I found out that this is what they were actually basing their whole case off of. Because again, as a journalist, as a reporter, I would never take something like that and bring it to you, bring it to the public, because it was so ridiculous. Even the way it was written, it was clearly written like as opposition research. And for them not to ask the question, hey, where does this come from? Can we triple check our sources? Well, they didn't need to because they didn't want to, because they had something that they wanted to go with. According to Tulsi, December 8th, that was the day they all gathered in the big Oval Office. Susan Rice even took the time to write a CYA email apparently after the fact saying that yes, while President Obama wants the intel community to follow up on this, he wanted to make sure that they did it through proper channels. Whatever the channels, they definitely weren't proper. And the outcome of all of this was this that I'm about to play you.
Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
The president-elect, although legally elected, is not legitimate.
I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
You said you believe that Russia's interference altered the outcome of the election.
I do. We have a president who, if in fact it is proven, has been assisted by the Russians and may in fact not be a legitimate president.
The one thing that Trump is fearful of when it comes to his being president is that finally we will see how illegitimate his victory actually was.
I have an objection. I object to the 15 votes from the state of North Carolina. I object because people are horrified.
He's an illegitimate president.
Do you believe Trump is a legitimate president?
What I believe is that there's no question that the outcome of this election was affected by the Russian interference.
There absolutely is a cloud of illegitimacy.
So that legitimacy is in question, yes.
So that was a very tainted election. And in that sense, it's illegitimate.
Wow. Okay, so more posts from Trump. saying, nothing is going to change until this happens. And he shows some people in jail. And then he says he wants Barack Obama being held accountable for this. I mean, I'll just say this, guys. Like, what actually happened was so wrong. And we've talked about this before, like in kids' sports where you have to go up and shake everybody's hand after the fact. The other team, maybe, your team lost, but the reality is the world goes on. In the case of Obama and Hillary, yeah, their team lost, but the world did go on. And yet they didn't want it to the point where they were trying to get in the way of anything that Donald Trump could do by completely undermining his authority. And it's why the president now, President Trump, is back in office. You tried really hard, guys, now, didn't you, to make sure he didn't get back in there? And yet he's there and he's demanding accountability, with Ratcliffe now over at the CIA saying we need accountability. We need indictments. You've got Tulsi demanding indictments, and of course the president himself. So a lot is going to come down to Pam Bondi. The pressure's on, right? Here's Ratcliffe.
So what I think I hear you saying is there is still an opportunity for indictments, potential prosecutions, accountability from those people who may have lied under oath, like John Brennan, James Comey, and perhaps Hillary Clinton.
Well, that's why I've made the referrals that I have. DNI Gabbard has made referrals, and why we're going to continue to share the intelligence that would support the ability of our Department of Justice to make bring fair and just claims against those who have perpetrated this hoax against the American people and this stain on our country.
Director, one other question on this. Tulsi, as well as President Trump, used the word
treason. Treason is what she goes on to say. In other words, was this treasonous to the point where you are so badly trying to undermine the will of the people if you're trying to set up the incoming president for disaster? I mean, it's like dirty games that they're playing. And we know politics is bad, but this is a whole other level of bad. And the president now, President Trump, is looking back on this and saying, wow. And that can't ever happen again. It's just not how we're supposed to run our country. So it's interesting to me at this moment in time. I'm watching Brennan all over the cable airwaves, like in the last 24 hours. How many times has he's been on at least twice, maybe 3 times. He's trying to get his side of the story out there on that little flailing little MSNBC network that even Comcast doesn't want to have anything to do with. Bye. Anyway, he's out there trying to sell his story, and I don't think anyone's buying it. He wants the deep state to exist so that the deep state can push a particular narrative. Listen to him.
To preserve what we believe to be our democracy.
And it's particularly important for people who I think are nonpartisan or apolitical like me. I'm not a registered Democrat or Republican. I eschew politics, quite frankly.
No, by the way, he's not partisan. He's just ABT. Anyone but Trump. Let's continue to listen to Mr. Brennan.
I served 6 presidents, 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans. I didn't agree with all the policies of any of them, but yet I respected them. I thought that what they were doing was what they thought was in the best interest of the United States. But our institutions, the Department of Justice, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, Defense Intelligence Agency, all of these really are so critically important to our national security, but also global peace and security. And when we see these institutions being torn down and being used as political footballs, this is really detrimental to, I think, our interests as a country. And that's why I think it's important for people to speak out, not to do it for political reasons, but to call people out when they're saying things that are wrong, when they're misrepresenting, mischaracterizing.
Excuse me, weren't you the guy who told us it was Russian misinformation? Well, you and Clapper and Comey and everybody else, to say that Hunter Biden laptop was actually authentic and belonged to Hunter? Weren't you actually the same crew of characters that said, no, that virus that we got hit with in March 2020, that could not have possibly come from that lab in Wuhan, China, where they were doing gain-of-function research and, in fact, actually using some U.S. taxpayer dollars, it's now come out, to create that thing. Oh, no. I'm sorry. Like, there's only so much trust that's left, but let's continue just listening to the rest of his swan song here as he tries to plead his case on the only place that will hear it, MSNBC.
Isn't the facts? Because the American people are going to all the different news organizations and they're being misinformed. And so, quite frankly, I don't blame a lot of people who have the misimpressions because they're being fed these false narratives. I do blame the people in Congress, the people who know better, but continue to deceive and continue to mislead for just craven political purposes. That is something that really irritates me.
One of the things that I keep thinking about all the time is you talk about that global aspect of this.
Okay. I mean, for real? After everything we've been through and all the lies you guys have been caught in, you actually sit there on MSNBC and you blame everyone else. I mean, it's actually, that takes some serious cojones, shall we say. I mean, like the guy's like just willing to just brazenly get up there and lie and continue to spin and say that he's doing this and it's to save the world and to save the country. And I'm like, buddy, like that ship has sailed. I'm telling you, they're going to have a real problem. Going back to those poll numbers that we were talking about earlier in the show, when you're looking at the lowest numbers in 35 years and you see, 26% approval rating, nobody likes the Democrat Party right now. You know why? We figured out the Democrat Party was lying to us nonstop. For how long? I mean, we're going on time. Not to mention, if they weren't lying, apparently they were making money, something you're not allowed to talk about either. Nancy Pelosi getting caught with her pants down effectively by that guy, Jake Tapper, who's trying to redeem himself in some way, shape, or form. Don't buy anything he says. Anyway, here's Nancy at least getting asked the question on how it is that she's got a bigger stock portfolio than kind of like anyone. She's beaten Warren Buffett. She's beaten hedge funds. I mean, forget about it. Nobody can do as well as Nancy Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi became rich.
Why do you have to read that? We're here to talk about the 60th anniversary of Medicaid. That's what I agreed to come to talk about.
But I wanted
what that means in the election.
I wanted to give you a chance just to respond. He accused you of insider trading. What's your response to that?
That's ridiculous. In fact, I very much support the stop the trading of members of Congress. Not that I think anybody's doing anything wrong. If they are prosecuted and they go to jail. But because of the confidence it instills in the American people, don't worry about this. But I have no concern about the obvious investments that had been made over time.
Okay.
I'm not
no concern. Well, you know what? The rest of us kind of have a few concerns, just a few concerns. So again, the Democrat Party really, really struggling is nobody believes anything that they're saying right about now. And so John Brennan, you can keep hitting the cable airwaves, but you know what? It's falling on deaf ears. We played a soundbite actually just yesterday in this show about a woman on MSNBC saying one of the reasons Democrats are not resonating and they're not getting the word out is because they keep going on shows that are considered friendly territory, right? Whether it be CNN, where Nancy's like, how dare you ask that? That's not what we agreed for me to talk about. Or MSNBC, which has effectively become a form of deep state media. I can't say state media right now, right? Because Donald Trump's in the Oval Office, but a kind of deep state media for the quote unquote resistance. And so there is no diversity of opinion over there, and they're not going to hold any of these people to the fire. And the American people know it, which brings us full circle back to why are they here? Reminder, subscribe, share, like, all of that good stuff. How is it that Trish Regan can just start a show? We just hang up a shingle effectively a couple of years ago, coming on live with you guys every day. And you know what? We're approaching 1 million subs. And that is because there's a truth here, a transparency here, occasionally too much transparency here, if you would, right? Didn't we have that the other day? I literally, in yesterday's show, the live feed went down and we had to start again. So occasionally, from my perspective, too much transparency, and that I want to be able to deliver a flawless product to you guys at all times, always. But you know how the sausage is made, so to speak, and you're in on it, and we're in on this together. And yes, you're here for my analysis and my reaction to a lot of the sound bites that I do play you from all different sides. It's important to me that you hear all of those sides. And I know sometimes it's annoying. It's like, my gosh, do we have to really listen to Brennan? Well, you need to know what Brennan's saying in order to understand when you know what the facts are, and he's out there spinning something else entirely. You need to understand that in order to understand how significant a crisis this is. Really, and why people are demanding accountability at this moment in time. Speaking of accountability, Mel Gibson is demanding some accountability on the West Coast, you guys. This is very interesting to me. So he's furious. He's actually coming out and saying, what on earth went down? Remember the fires, those absolutely horrible fires. I feel so bad for so many people. So many people are still struggling with being out of their homes. And this is something that he just brought up. Actually, I think we have this in our shorts feed. Maybe I can show you there. Can I play it? I don't think I can actually play it. But Let me actually paraphrase for you what Mel Gibson was saying. He's sort of accusing, if you would, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, and also Karen Bass, of possibly have engaging in some kind of Maui-inspired potential land grab in the Pacific Palisades. Because he's like, how is it that everybody was just somehow gone? I mean, you had Karen Bass out traveling, actually in Africa at the time. You had Gavin Newsom pretending to call the president even when he wasn't really calling them, all this kind of stuff that was going on. And his point is, you knew this was coming. Why didn't you better prepare for it? So I'm wondering, as I look at this, again, I wish I could bring you this. Let me see if we can go one other way and I can pull up this sound. But if you look at this, what you're seeing is that he is calling them out, again, calling out this establishment. You consider how much money, for example, how much money people are contributing by way of taxes in California. I mean, it's enormous. And he makes the point that, gosh, you've got people that are here legally paying enormous amounts, the most of any country, right? So Mel Gibson, I would not be surprised. I'm just going to take a stab at this. He might be looking at possibly running for governor. Here's another soundbite where he called it out. Let me show you. He's just sick of the leadership, if you would, in California, because he doesn't understand why you have people like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass still in office, given everything that's happened. Remember how we had the challenges where you had to call in, and Donald Trump did call in the National Guard, and they were so mad about it. They were like, how dare you? Well, here's his response to this. Just take a listen.
Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have already proven their incompetence and poor leadership during the Los Angeles wildfires. Now, as we experience rampant lawlessness and civil unrest, it's never been more clear they're unable to respond effectively and responsibly during calamity. And I ask my fellow Angelenos, why are Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass still in office? How much more of their destructive decision-making?
It's a fair question, right? Why are they still in office? Why would people be voting for them? I don't fully understand or know the answer to that. But I think it's about to change. And I wouldn't be surprised if that guy gets out there and he runs for governor of California. Kamala Harris turning it down. Kamala Harris, she's got bigger aspirations. No, she's not going to run for governor of California. So Mel, I'm kind of thinking, I don't know, not that anybody would ever choose Kamala over you, Mel Gibson, or vice versa, I guess. But Kamala came out with a statement, and this was interesting to me. Let's take a quick listen.
So former VP Kamala Harris, VP announces that she's not going to run for governor of California, said this in a statement. For now, my leadership and my public service will not be in elected office. I look forward to getting back out and listening to the American people, adding she'll remain in the fight. The move already fueling speculation about a 28 presidential run. But is that what voters want? So we woke up.
And she's not kidding. Actually, MSNBC, of course, MSNBC spoke with her, and they're hearing rumblings. She wants back in a really big way. So no more California for one Kamala Harris. Is this why she rented that fancy apartment in New York City with her hubby? Is this why she went on Col Bear last night? Oh, Col Bear, interestingly, right? The guy who's like persona non grata for the Trump administration. She chose his show to go on where she kind of made a fool of herself and kept laughing and laughing and laughing. That would be number one rule. You know what? If I were running her campaign, we got to work on that laugh, because the hyena thing, it's just not going to fly in America. No way, no how. Anyway, not even MSNBC wants to see her in that slot.
Kamala Harris has announced she will not run for governor of California in 2026, ending part of the speculation surrounding her next steps. Sources close to Harris tell NBC News the former vice president gave the California race serious thought, but is, quote, looking to preserve her ability to launch a 2028 White House run should she choose to take that route. In a statement released yesterday, Harris writes in part, for now, my leadership and public service will not be in elected office. I look forward to getting back out and listening to the American people helping to elect Democrats across the nation who will fight fearlessly, and sharing more details in the months ahead about my own plans. So, Susan Page, not California for Kamala Harris, but she's certainly leaving the door open to a full presidential run, unlike the sort of truncated one she had last summer.
Yeah. You know, the 2028 Democratic presidential nomination battle is like a full employment project for Democratic officials. We got senators, we've got governors, we've got former officials like Kamala Harris all out there meeting with voters, sometimes going to places like Iowa and South Carolina and New Hampshire. That always gets our attention. So this is, I think, going to be a wide open race. I would just note one problem that Kamala Harris may have, which is that Democrats historically have not been interested in nominating again someone who ran, got the nomination, and failed. I don't believe the Democrats have renominated someone in that position since Adlai Stevenson. So I think that's a little bit of a hurdle for her, but it's clear that the California governor's race did not engage her attention the way a potential national race has done, Willie.
Yeah. I mean, just a little bit of a hurdle. I mean, Adlai Stevenson, you're going back to, 1952 and 1956, where Adlai, he lost twice in a row, okay? So they really haven't repeated that mistake ever since. Granted, they've had a lot of mistakes, a whole lot of them. Guys, it's not that hard. Well, maybe it is. You got to actually stand up for the people. You haven't been perceived, shall we say, as standing up for the people. You've been perceived as standing up for the elites and for the people that want to come illegally to America. And that's not going to fly, or plan Peoria, as they say, right, with everyday folks, because everyday folks are the ones that are paying the taxes and therefore are caught with the economic liability of millions of people coming in that are now suddenly getting a lot of freebies and handouts. And now the latest and greatest is Letitia James, right? She's suing the Trump administration because she does not want the Trump administration having access to anyone's name on the SNAP benefits. And the Trump administration is saying, well, wait a second. You know, if somebody's illegally getting benefits, we ought to be able to know about this. So it's once again setting up this just huge contest where it's all about liberal states versus the Trump administration. This is not a healthy scenario. It's like they want to march us into some kind of civil war, if you would, and that is not good. Not good. In other words, we need to be a united nation under God, right? We are the United States of America. And it's my belief that you cannot, if you lose your race, suddenly decide we are going to try to dismantle a presidency or hurt a presidency. And we're doing this in the name of good, in the name of the country. Because in other words, if the people voted for him, the people are the ones that are calling the shots at the end of the day. It is great to have you here. I want to remind you, please make sure you subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. Let me know what you think. Also, we got a market, right, that's really been challenged today. 76 Research is where you need to go. We just put out a note a short time ago, 76research.com. Use code word $. That way you can get the 76 report. And we've got a couple of notes that come out every week with this sort of advice and guidance on what we think at 76 Research is the best way to be approaching this market. Full disclosure, I, of course, bought in today. I always buy when the market's going down, right? Have you heard my clearance story? My dad saying when I was a little kid and we go to Marshall's, which was already clearance, he'd say, Trish, the best brand is clearance, the very best brand. You got to make sure it's clearance. He's like the opposite of Trump, right? The very best is clearance. And so for the longest time, I thought that clearance was like Chanel. It was like a brand. Anyway, I look at these times when the market goes down as an opportunity to go in and pick some of my favorites. We do have favorites at 76 Research, so I encourage you to go there. Use code word $. My gift to you, that is my company. I started with a very dear friend, and we do have a lot of good ideas. I hope that you subscribe to the show because I want to see you back here again, live, tomorrow. Lots and lots to talk about. See you then, guys. Thanks.